All right, guys, back for another USMNT Top 10 weekend. Haji Wright, heartbreak, 2 penalties converted. Oh, so close. Just literally half a centimeter offside. Oof. Rough heartbreak for Haji Wright and Coventry City. And, as weekends go, it hasn't been as good as a lot of the recent weekends we've had. In the last, 6 months or so, especially, but it's still been a good weekend nonetheless. We have a lot of good performances to talk about. How are you guys doing? The KC Sports Nerd with a good point would love to have a Copa America chat about mentality after watching that FA Cup semi today. Never giving up, even though it's United, Yeah, 100%. 3-0 down. You would think most championship teams would fold and go, nah, it's too much. But, they took advantage of their weaknesses, got a little lucky on the second goal as a deflection, but overall, never gave up, delivered, and, took it all the way to penalties. And frankly, could have won that game if, again, barely a centimeter maybe offside. Like I'll show you the screenshot when we get into it. But if Haji Wright had, if his boot size was one size smaller, I think he might have been onside. That's how close it was. But yeah, still a good weekend, a lot of good performances. We'll talk about them. How have you guys been? I apologize. This is a little earlier. I hope that doesn't mess with some of your guys' schedule. But tonight, tomorrow's my birthday, but it's a Monday. So I'm celebrating with some friends tonight. We're going out for dinner. So I had to push this forward a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about Dest as well. Some bad news coming out of that department. Looks like he probably will be missing Copa America due to an injury. So not what you want to hear. But, we have options. And later in the week, I'm going to do a full video analyzing our options, the pros and cons of all of our different options. It's bad. We're going to miss Dest for sure. We're in a place with the roster now where it's not as bad as it would have been even 2 or 3 years ago. So thank you, everyone, wishing me happy birthday. I appreciate it. Jacob Ramirez says, Dest tore my soul out. I think you mean S-O-U-L, Jacob, not S-O-L-E, because that would be the sole of your boot. But yeah, Dest can have my knee, says Jacob Ramirez. Yeah. Dest is one of our sauciest players, man. It would have been so cool to have him for Copa America, despite his sometimes defensive issues, which I think, still exist. But maybe this will force Greg to try something different, to change something. What am I saying? We all know Greg ain't going to change. But let's have a quick word from our sponsor. And while we do, guys, smash that like button for me. Very much appreciated.
Fantasy Sports is back with a new and improved pick'em game across all sports that makes it easy to play fantasy sports with just a few clicks. Each sport allows you to build a parlay that includes between 2 and 5 predictions about the outcomes of player projections. As you would expect, the more picks you include, the greater the potential payout. Don't go crazy with it and play responsibly, but adding a few bucks here and there to a game gives it a little more excitement and stakes. Use my promo code 11YANKS or click the link in the description to start playing, and Underdog will match whatever you put in your account up to $100. Enjoy!
All right, guys. Obviously, play responsibly. Don't bet the house or the kids' college fund or your own savings. I usually put $5 to $10 just to make it interesting, but it's fun. It's just fun. Thank you to Underdog. Pete was arguing with my brother on Twitter last night, says John Moore. He really loves Chelsea. I don't know which one was your brother, but I was arguing with some Chelsea fans because I dared to suggest on Twitter that, 20 million for Christian Pulisic, 21 goal contributions already on the season, that was a bargain. And somehow that triggered Chelsea fans to get upset at me. I don't know which one was your brother, but a lot of them were just, Pulisic was not good for, look, sure, the last 2 seasons weren't great for Pulisic. There were lots of reasons for that. And yeah, I'm glad he's not at Chelsea anymore because that's a, disaster mid-table club. But to get, like, a lot of them were mad that I suggested that Milan had gotten a bargain, which I still think they did, right? So yeah. Let's start with Aiden Morris. Now, ordinarily, Aiden Morris, although he did have a good performance against the Columbus Crew, probably would not have made the top 10. But it was a little bit of a quieter weekend, so he did just manage to sneak in there. Played 90 minutes, got 1 assist. The assist itself was nothing special, but the remainder of his performance was what sort of snuck him in. 2 out of 2 successful dribbles, 4 out of 4 accurate long balls, 6 out of 6 tackles won, which is a match high. 9 out of 11 ground duels won, which was also a match high, and managed to draw 3 fouls. Aiden Morris is almost certainly going to be a key part of our Olympic team come August. So we're going to need him to be, even though I don't think he's got a high ceiling in the way that we talk about a Tyler Adams or, Johnny Cardoso. I mean, he's the same age as Johnny Cardoso already. But for Aiden, I think, we need to hope that he can stay healthy, because I think he's going to be a key part of that Olympic team this summer, right? Perhaps competing with Tanner Tessman for a spot, although Tanner Tessman could play the 8, but then he's also competing with a guy like Jack McGlynn. Midfield in that Olympic team, central midfield, all 3 positions, the 10, the 8, and the 6 are all very, very stacked. So we'll see. But, by MLS standards, he's having a very good season. Now, we all know that doesn't necessarily translate to a good level or even to the national team, but I think at some point, if Morris is continuing to perform like this in MLS, he needs to look abroad. Maybe try to go play in the Netherlands or, someone like that where he can, or the Championship maybe. I don't know if he's got the speed of play for the Championship, but I think the Netherlands could be a good spot for him. So let's see. But this was the assist. Like I said, really nothing special, just a lateral pass to Steven Moreira, who then scored a golazo of a goal against Portland. Diego Luna against Real Salt Lake, playing against my beloved and disastrous Chicago Fire. Put the final nail in the coffin with a pretty sweet goal, although it was also some pretty shambolic defending. Interestingly enough, Luna started this game on the bench, and Fidel Barajas started in his place. And I think there was a good, a warning to Diego Luna that if you're not going to perform, getting benched by a 17-year-old isn't probably the most flattering thing, but came off the bench and scored a really nice goal. Sure, I mean, the Chicago Fire, an absolute dumpster fire. This was the goal. Managed to take it here. Took some time. The defending was shambolic. Nobody near him. Just awful. The Fire, they lost this game 4-0 at home. They were 3-0 down at halftime, and then Luna put the nail in the coffin in extra time. Probably would not have made the top 10 on another week, but on a slower week, he manages to sneak in. Luna is one of those guys that's probably going to be at the Olympics, but his performances for RSL this year have not met the expectations that we had for him in terms of growth and improvement from last season. So he's not really that young anymore, Diego Luna, 21. Okay, these guys aren't under 20 players. I think sometimes we think of these guys as under 20 players because we remember them from the under 20 World Cup cycle in the last cycle. They're not. They're under 23 players now. So we need to have higher. You're not just a young, promising player in MLS. In MLS, you need to be delivering, right? And Luna hasn't always done that this season, but it was a nice goal. Maximo Carrizo in the U.S. Open Cup, the only the soccer competition in the United States that has true stakes and is truly all-inclusive of the entire soccer pyramid, which actually does not exist in, the United States. But 16-year-old Maximo Carrizo, playing for NYCFC 2, scored the winning goal against Hartford Athletic, and it was a nice goal. He also had 4 out of 5 successful dribbles, 1 out of 3 accurate crosses, 3 out of 4 accurate long balls, 8 out of 10 ground duels won, 0 out of 1 aerial duels, 0 out of 1 aerial duels won, and 2 fouls drawn. BMR says NYCFC 2 must have been a slow week. Yes and no. Only because he's 16, right? And it was a very nice goal. It came bouncing out to him, and he took it on the volley. and finished it. Again, it was partially that it was a slow week for sure, but partially also 16-year-old getting his first professional goal in the Open Cup, a competition with actual stakes, being a knockout competition. That was a nice finish. So good for young Maximo. I don't think he's going to represent the US in the long term if he's good enough to play for Argentina. I think seems to be that his dad has indicated many times that he, prefers Argentina. But he may not be good enough for Argentina. We don't know. And if he's not, then he could be a good addition to us down the line. But 16, so let's wait and see. This is where I'll start watching players, right? When they're playing in MLS Next Pro or the Open Cup, whatever, at 16, I don't watch GA Cup or academy teams like watching, prepubescent boys and trying to hype them up. It's just not going to happen on this channel. Number 7, Gianluca Busio for Venezia scored the winning goal against Lecce, double C, so I think it's Lecce. Played 90 minutes, scored 1 goal, the winning goal. 2 chances created, 1 out of 1 successful dribbles, 1 out of 2 accurate crosses, 4 out of 9 ground duels won, 1 out of 2 aerial duels won, and 1 foul drawn. This was the finish here from Busio. Venezia are 3rd at the moment in the Serie B. So Tanner Tessman also had a nice chipped pass in order to help, start this play. They're 3rd. Now, the 3rd team in Serie B doesn't get promoted. They go into the playoffs, similar to the championship. I would prefer them to get promoted automatically. But I do think, I'm not sure about Busio, but I do think Tanner Tessman, I've heard Tanner Tessman has a lot of interest from Serie A teams. And I think even if, Venezia doesn't get promoted, I think there will be interest from maybe mid to lower end Serie A teams in both Busio and Tanner, because both of them are having very good seasons in Serie B. Both Olympic guys will be with the Olympic team. Going to be tough to break into that USMNT midfield in the next few years, just because we are so stacked, right? I mean, there's a chance, Luca Del Torre won't go to Copa America. There's a good chance, I'd say. Brendan Aronson may not go to Copa America. So in terms of, central midfielders coming through, you're going to have to be really good in order to break through, right? If you're a 6 or 8 / like Tessman, you're behind Johnny, Adams, Musa, McKennie. If you're an 8, you're probably also behind De La Torre, right? So there's just a lot of competition for spots. You're probably also behind Maloney at the 6 if you're Tessman. Now, that could change in a year or two, but I'm just saying right now, there are some people saying, like, call him up, put him in the national team. Okay, for who, though? Who do you take out? I think, let's hope both Busio and Tessman have a really good Olympic performances. And then after that, let's wait and see what happens with their season, with next season. Number 6, Chris Richards played a good game for Crystal Palace, back from injury finally. Another positive note is that Luca De La Torre is back. He played the last, I think, 14, 15 minutes for Celta Vigo this week. So that's, fingers crossed, that's good. We really cannot afford any more injuries before Copa America. We already lost Dest, it looks like. But Richards is back, and that's positive. Played 90 minutes, had a 94% passing accuracy, was very much involved in the second goal that Crystal Palace scored, stepped into midfield, won the ball, and sent it upfield, and within 2 or 3 passes, it was in the back of the net. So good work from Chris Richards. Also had 1 clearance, 1 interception, 3 recoveries, won 2 out of 3 ground duels, and 3 out of 4 aerial duels. Joseph Scally, the man whom the spotlight will be on now that Sergino Dest is potentially out, had an assist. Despite only playing 21 minutes against Hoffenheim, Gladbach ended up losing this game 4-3. All hail Pellegrino Matarazzo. But he did get a nice assist, had 100% passing accuracy, 1 out of 3 successful dribbles, 1 out of 4 ground duels won, 0 out of 0 aerial duels won. Guys, I wish I could show you the sketch of this goal, but it's not on Twitter. It was on Twitter, and then they banned it. They copyright banned it. I looked on YouTube. I checked on Gladbach's channel. I checked on the Bundesliga channel. I checked on Hoffenheim's channel. I could not find the highlights for this game. So I do not have the sketch for this goal, but tomorrow the goal will actually be on the Patreon. So Patreon subscribers, something to look forward to. Johnny Cardoso from Real Betis had another very good game in Betis's 2-1 win over Valencia. Played 89 minutes, created one chance, 1 out of 1 successful dribbles, 2 out of 3 accurate long balls. His total duels won were a match high, which, I think is interesting because a lot of the rhetoric against Johnny is, he's fine with the ball, but he's not defensively very good. Or we have people like Jesse Marsh saying he can't, play the single pivot by himself, and really not sure that's true. But most of his performance was a very defensive performance. Won a lot of he did what you would want from a 6, from a defensive midfielder. Winning duels, winning the ball, protecting the back line, snuffing out danger, and then sending it forward at every opportunity. And then also helping to dictate tempo with his passing, right? Not just winning it and sending it forward, but also helping to be a bit of a maestro in midfield. Also drew 2 fouls, committed 2 fouls. But a good game from Johnny Cardoso, who continues to put that shot. With Tyler Adams still out, I don't think Tyler Adams should be a lock starter necessarily, right? Came back from injury yet again and then is injured again. So, yeah, it's a different issue. Let's wait and see. But, I think maybe rushing Tyler Adams back wasn't the best idea in some ways. But Johnny being healthy and available and playing well at a good level certainly gives us options. Joshua Sargent versus Bristol City, played 91 minutes, had 1 assist, could have been a goal, but quite unselfish with the assist. Created 4 chances, 2 out of 2 accurate long balls, 1 out of 5 ground duels won, and 2 out of 2 aerial duels won. Here you go, and, as a striker, you'd almost want them to be a little more selfish maybe and finish that. But, he sees the goalkeeper coming off his line, narrowing the angle, and he figures, let's be sure, and lays it off, which, certainly was the right decision since he scored. So good for Josh Sargent. Only his 2nd assist of the season, but takes his goal contribution total to 17. Next up, Griffin Yow of Westerlo. Played a good game against Standard Liège. Played 70 minutes, had 1 goal, which was a penalty, had 1 assist. It was a 3-1 win over, a good team. Had 2 chances created, right? 0 out of 2 accurate long balls, 0 out of 3 successful dribbles, 6 recoveries, 5 out of 11 ground duels won, and 0 out of 0 aerial duels won. Griffin is taking advantage, in my opinion. He'll almost certainly be with the Olympic team, especially because Taylor Booth is still injured, and Kevin Paredes will probably be there, but we don't have a lot of really pure wingers on that Olympic team, and he's certainly one of them, and he's playing well in Belgium, which is not the greatest league, but he's producing. I think he's got 7 and 5 now, 7 goals, 5 assists. This was the assist. He actually, and you'll see this on the Patreon video tomorrow, he actually pressed, won this ball, beat his man, was being pushed over, and as he was being pushed over, he still managed to get the cross off for his teammate to score. And then the clincher, really, the 3rd goal was his penalty that he finished quite nicely. So congrats to Griffin. Haji Wright. What an FA Cup campaign for him. What a season for him. Played 120 minutes today in the FA Cup semi-final against Manchester United. Scored 1 goal, which was a penalty in the dying minutes. He was also involved in winning that penalty, right? He got the cross off that his teammate shot, which hit, was it Casemiro's hand? I don't think it was Casemiro. It wasn't Casemiro's hand. I think it was somebody else. And 3 chances created, 1 out of 3 successful dribbles, 1 out of 2 accurate crosses, 1 out of 7 ground duels won. It was Juan Bissaka. Thank you, Republic Admiral. Thank you. 1 out of 3 aerial duels won. This was the first penalty. Sent Onana the wrong way. This was... Excuse me, I'm sorry. And sent Onana again the wrong way, going the opposite direction of the shootout. He was the first guy up. So certainly a guy that we can rely on from a penalty perspective. Had the goal against Wolves in the quarterfinal and then now performed quite well against Manchester United. So well done to him. Certainly if we're ever stuck in a penalty shootout, his reliability on penalties, because he's been, Coventry's primary penalty taker this season, will help us, right? And I put my 5 penalty takers on Twitter the other day. I had Pulisic, Reina, Weah, McKennie, and Adams. So clear. I mean, I was more thinking about in terms of the starting lineup, but in the truth be told, if you're 120 minutes, it doesn't matter. You put your penalty takers, you keep them on the field, or you bring them on the field. I would probably remove Weah and Adams, and I'd put Pepe, who Pepe has been. I think it was Tim Ream who said in training that Pepe's the best penalty taker. So I'd put Pepe there. Pepe's also taken a penalty for PSV this season. Haji's been taking them for Coventry. So if you now have Pulisic, Reina, McKennie, Haji, and Pepe, I think I'd be pretty comfortable with those penalty options. But looking at the offside call, so Haji got this assist late in extra time, got the assist, was called back for offside. This was the offside line, you guys. I'm just going to let you look at that. Is that foot over the line by a hair? Probably. It is such a marginal call. Whether you think they were robbed, or my general take on it is, look, obviously I'm biased towards Haji because he's American, right? But the line has to be drawn somewhere. Wherever you draw the line, there's going to be some tight calls, right? Wherever you draw the line, there's going to be some tight calls. This one is extremely tight. He's offside. Barely. A hair's breadth offside. But where do people say, oh, if it's that close, okay, here's the argument. If it's that close, it shouldn't be offside. Okay, then what you do is you enter a new gray area of what is that close, right? What if his foot is just another centimeter over the line? Is that considered that close? Now we're arguing about that. What if it's 1.5 centimeters, right? Now we're arguing. So either way, the line is drawn there. It's unlucky for Haji. It's unlucky for Coventry. What a shambolic disaster Manchester United is. To be 3-0 up and then to give up 3 goals and very nearly 4 to a championship side just shows you what a disaster that team is and continues to be. But Haji Wright, certainly with, player of the weekend honors as far as USMNT goes. So not a terrible USMNT weekend overall. I see there's a lot of arguments about Sargent in the chat and whether or not Sargent is a striker for us. Is he one of the guys? So I actually think, and again, I will make a video about this in midweek. I actually think Sargent's chances of making Copa America increase with Dest's injury. Because, Pulisic plays tomorrow. He was not great in midweek against... sorry, I am blanking. But here's the thing. Dest being gone means potentially we have 2 options, right? Scally is going to be in the roster one way or another. Whether or not he starts is a different story. So then the question then becomes, do we bring a backup right back for Scally, like a Brian Reynolds? or Roma. Thank you, guys. Sorry. Roma in the Europa League. Do we bring a backup right back to Scally, or do we just bring Scally and look at the absolute depth of options of guys who can play right back in a pinch? Tim Weah, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Tyler Adams, Chris Richards, if you want to go more defensive. Yedlin is a no. Bravado. No Yedlin, no Shaq Moore. We're trying to do well in Copa America, okay? These guys are not it. So that would be the question, right? If you and I'll discuss this more in depth. Is it now a good opportunity to play 3 at the back and maybe play wing backs, right? Right wing backs, left wing back, Tim Weah as a right wing back, for example. Is that an option? Is Greg going to actually do that? We know Greg doesn't really tinker. But we have options. There are a lot of different options, and I'll discuss the pros and cons of each one in a video later this week. But not Griffin Dorsey. Guys, you have to have a baseline of quality when you're going into a Copa America. And none of those guys, not Shaq Moore, not DeAndre Yedlin, not Griffin Dorsey, not Brooks Lennon, not Nathan Harriel. Nathan Harriel will be at the Olympic team anyway, has that baseline of quality. And to be fair, to be honest, you could argue that Brian Reynolds might not even have that baseline of quality right now. So it's like you have to go how do we, does moving a guy like Musa, who probably won't start in our midfield anyway, if you put Musa at right back, will he do a better job than Joe Scally? Potentially, yeah. The good news is we have 2 good friendlies before Copa America to experiment and to try different things. I don't know if, Greg is going to do that, and I don't know what Greg's going to do. And to be honest, we're not even 100% sure that Sergino Dest is out. It seems likely, though. If he's out for the season ends mid-May, Copa starts mid June. Well, starts 20th of June. I doubt if it's a serious knee injury, like something like that, I doubt Dest is going to be there. And so it's time to start thinking about options. And once again, this is why it's so important for Greg to try things in friendlies and not just to keep running the same 4-3-3, right? We complain about this a lot with Greg, right? Why does he never really experiment? Why does he always run the same formation? Well, this is why, Greg. Because when players go down, it would be nice to have an alternative that we know works and that we've tried out in practice, that we've tried out against opponents. So we have some data, right, to be able to accommodate one player. Now we're going to be scrambling going, how do we replace Sergino Dest? Is Joe Scally, whose season has been very up and down, really it? Or do we have to, try something else now and figure it out with only 2 games to go? But once again, Greg Berhalter's stubborn refusal to try ever like a back 3 or, try different players in different positions. To be fair, he had to put Weston McKennie there, right, against Jamaica when Scally was pulled. But that was forced by necessity. That wasn't willing experimentation. So we'll see. I'll talk more about this later this week in the video about how we can replace Dest, what our options are. Thanks for hanging, guys. Patreon video will be out tomorrow with all of these goals and performances and highlights and clips and whatnot. It's a great way to support the channel if you're not already. And thank you to everybody who is. $3 a month. That's less than a cup of coffee a month if you want to. And if you can't, I totally understand. Times are tough financially for everybody right now. We have a super chat here from Bobby Hill. Let's see. Hello, Bobby Hill in the house. What up, Bobby? It's been a while, but when will you be doing another call-in show? Also, happy birthday, Pete. Thank you, Bobby. I tried doing call-in shows a few weeks ago. Didn't seem like people were so keen to call in. I thought maybe they would want to, and we did for a few weeks. People called in, and I enjoyed it. It was fun. But the last few times we did it, nobody was in the chat room, so I've stopped doing it. But if people want to do it, maybe as we get closer to Copa America, there will be more excitement, more, anxiety as we go into Copa America with Greg Berhalter at the helm, coming off very, very good seasons for the vast majority of our players. Two Fate Elite call in for right back discourse. Yeah, I think that would be something I have to plan out a little bit more. It's not my birthday today, Brian. It's tomorrow, but I'm celebrating today because Sunday and most of my friends work tomorrow. So yeah, that's why this stream is a little bit earlier than usual. We're going to be going out to have dinner, just chilling. Do a sign-up sheet to see if people will come. That's one way to do it. Or we could just open up, the Discord and see if people will show up. But certainly, right back discourse is definitely going to be a big discussion because there's a lot of options, right? They all have pros and cons. And they, and people are very passionate about, which one they want or which one they feel is good. But I think we can all agree we do not want to see Shaq Moore in this roster. I think that's where we can all agree. Whether or not we, want to try Tim Weah or Weston McKennie or Yunus Musa or Chris Richards or Tyler Adams or, Joe Scally or Brian Reynolds, or whether we want to try a back three and go with wing backs, put Josh Sargent on the right, Haji on the right, Weah draw. Like there's so many different alternative options. And I'll discuss them in video, and then you guys can, hit on me in the comments or whatever. Triple G making the decision. What do you guys think? What are the odds he brings Shaq Moore? Because he threatened to do it, right? He threatened to do it after January camp. He talked about Shaq Moore. With Dest being suspended against, Mexico, we got to try, not Mexico, Jamaica. We got to try some other guys. And this is an opportunity for them to memorize my PowerPoints and thus earn a spot on the field. But then he didn't actually end up bringing Shaq Moore, to his credit, which, to be honest, even, Shaq Moore's performance against Slovenia in January was quite poor. So, like, I don't want to give Greg too much credit for doing the obvious, but what do you guys think? Do you think there's what are the odds? What is the percentage odds that Greg brings Shaq Moore to Copa America? Put that in the chat. I want to see what people think. Tell me what you think. Dob Klinskovic. Did I say that right? Klinskovic. I'm going to guess that's Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, Slovakian. Who do you think wins CONCACAF Champions Cup? Whoa, JD's dog. Bro, I know it was 420 yesterday, but 100%, I don't think it's 100%. BMR says 5%, very optimistic. Marcus Yekel, 30. I think that's closer to what I feel. SL says 50-50. All right. John Moore, 20. Sese, 65. Sadly, pretty high chance. Scally hasn't really performed, and Greg doesn't seem to rate him. If Dest is injured, Al Weinstein says 80%. He's on to 40, 15, 15, 10, 50. I'm more of like 40%. Maybe that's optimistic. I think Greg has hopefully learned that Shaq Moore isn't even good against CONCACAF opponents, much less against, CONMEBOL opponents. And if he brings him, that should be a fireable offense, on top of the many fireable offenses that Greg has already committed in the last 5 years of being one of the most incompetent U.S. men's national team coaches ever. Who do you think wins CONCACAF Champions Cup? Ooh, good question. I don't think the Columbus Crew are winning it. I think... Let me see who's on the other end of the bracket. I know that the Columbus Crew are facing Monterrey. It's going to be either Monterrey or Club America. I'm going to go with Monterrey. No, I don't think it's going to be Pachuca. I'm going to guess Monterrey, but it could be either Monterrey or Club America. If the Columbus Crew, though, I'll say this. If the Crew manage to pull off a win against Monterrey, then they're favorites. I just think to be able to go down to Mexico again and win, or to be able to get the overall aggregate win twice in a row against Tigres and then against Monterrey, I think that would definitely give them the psychological advantage against Club America, who I think will beat Pachuca. But the chances of a U.S. and American player winning it are high because you've got Brandon Vasquez on Monterrey, Alejandro Zendejas on Club America, and then Patrick Schulte and Aiden Morris on the crew. There's nobody on Pachuca as far as I know. All right, guys, thank you for hanging. This was fun. Not, the best weekend ever, but also not a terrible one. Some exciting, positive developments. And keep your eye out for a video later this week. Thank you also to Bet Online for being a sponsor of the channel. Don't forget them. You guys have a great week, and I'll see you soon.